This video is to provide a summary of our class WebEx meeting last week on job satisfaction. We spent a few minutes just reviewing Chapter 1 of Latham's book, Becoming the Evidence-Based Manager. A number of important ideas in there with some practical recommendations on the best way to select employees. I'll go through that in a minute, but what's interesting to me in my mind is the similarities between selection and performance evaluation. There's two components that Latham refers to in terms of personality and cognitive ability. We'll get to that a little later in the semester. Latham selects 4 powerful selection tools listed here. Realistic job previews are indeed the most valid based on the research that's been conducted. And again, I highlight that the most ideal selection devices are similarly reliable, specific, valid, and strategically congruent as performance appraisal. An important way to think about job satisfaction is that it has both cognitive and emotional components. Your cognition is based on what you know and what you can tangibly see, and of course, emotions are your psychological and emotional reactions to what you see. The most common definition reads this way: a pleasurable or positive emotional state resulting from the appraisal of one's job or job experiences, and you could see in that definition both cognitive and emotional descriptions. Most of the time, job satisfaction is measured with 5 major facets: pay, promotion, supervision, co-workers, and work itself. Later on in this presentation, I'll show you evidence regarding each of those facets. One article we've read is Happy for the Work by Arthur Brooks. Great quote in there: for most Americans, work is a rock-solid source of life happiness. And he wrote a book called Gross National Happiness, highlighting the importance of work in people's overall life satisfaction. In fact, when people work, they tend to be happier. The conversation shifted a bit as I described the history of work ethic, and I do so by writing a book with that title. And here's a picture of the Garden of Eden, and what's one way to think about this is that in the early times, work was considered a curse. In the Bible, it's written, a curse devised by God explicitly to punish the disobedience of Adam and Eve. The Greek word for work stems from the Latin word meaning sorrow. Work was necessary for the satisfaction of material needs, but ancient philosophers regarded the majority of men in the minority sought to engage in pure exercises of the mind, art, philosophy, and politics. In the beginning, work was regarded as a curse to be avoided. During the Reformation, this here is a picture of Martin Luther, which represented a transition in the way people came to believe and experience work. This was after religious and political upheaval of the Reformation in the 16th century. Essentially, Martin Luther suggested that people can serve God through their work, that work is the universal base of society, and a person should work diligently, and that all work was regarded as a calling, a spiritual dignity. John Calvin, pictured here, was also instrumental in the evolution in the way humankind thought of work. John Calvin, one of his fundamental beliefs, said all men should work, including the rich, and argued that people should not lust after wealth or possession, but reinvest their profits into financing other ventures. And this was regarded as a radical departure from Christian beliefs of the Middle Ages, which strongly influenced the foundation of this country. In fact, he called it a religious duty to seek occupation that provides the greatest earnings. This is a big deal, and again, represents a shift in the way society would regard work. It was encouraged with an attitude of service. It was regarded a calling, and a key element of existence at that point was diligence, punctuality, and affirmative gratification. That led to the rise of capitalism. Again, we kind of joke at this picture of Gordon Gekko. But this, again, represented a major shift in the way people thought about themselves and work. Protestant ethic was conducive to productivity and capital in Europe, which of course migrated to the U.S., and the philosophy of hard work became part of the Western world. In fact, the Protestant sects, the Puritans and the Quakers, came to America not only seeking spiritual freedom, but also with the ideal that a moral life consisted of hard work and determination. This is a major evolution in work and what it means for society. The Industrial Revolution in the early part of the 20th century was another major change in how humankind came to experience work. There is an effort to systematize and make the most efficient use of resources, including workers' time and effort, all for the sake of being more productive. Factories produced more based on the economy as it was constructed. Innovation was pursued. There was little done to encourage self-fulfillment at work. In fact, the ideal was to produce as much as possible for as little extra cost associated with the welfare of employees. The Industrial Revolution gave way to scientific management philosophy in the early part of the 20th century, which essentially believed that workers were lazy, motivated primarily about money. Money was viewed as the motivating force, and that kind of the hard hand of employers was needed to whip employees into shape. But that became outdated after World War II. Behavioral theorists such as B.F. Skinner, pictured here, argued that workers were not intrinsically lazy, but in fact purposeful and adaptive. They would be especially productive if given a challenging assignment, challenging environment, and this led to the human relations movement and theories of job enrichment and participatory management, all of which put employees and their recognition, responsibility, and desire for achievement in the forefront of motivation. Of course, in modern life, the way you and I would approach work these days, and probably the way you think about your own work, is more as a career, as a means for developing your own self-identity. In fact, work is a source of people's well-being, and it's not uncommon to hear people seek to derive meaning in their lives, which is realized most often through their work. In fact, one quote in the book History of Work Ethic, is that work is indeed a search for daily meaning as well as daily bread, with the view that work is an important source of achievement, feedback, self-fulfillment, etc. And the point of that discussion is to see how work has changed through the history of mankind. Now, in this chart, we see examples of what causes job satisfaction and motivation. The challenge of the work is the most significant predictor of motivated behavior as well as job satisfaction. A couple of other little job facets are listed there. But you also see this large blue line at the top of the chart listed as others, and we concluded that the primary other source of job satisfaction outside of the work itself is one's natural inclination to be happy or sad. In fact, internal dispositions is a major determinant of one's job satisfaction. People's inclination to be satisfied in general affects their overall job satisfaction. Translated a different way, essentially, there's two major causes of job satisfaction, and that's the complexity and challenge of work and one's natural internal dispositions. As it relates to the internal dispositions, employees have a natural tendency to be satisfied or dissatisfied with work regardless of their conditions. And in fact, some dispositional traits like positive and negative affect, which is essentially emotion, are strongly related to satisfaction. Here's the facets of job satisfaction and their correlations with overall satisfaction, and you see that the work itself and opportunities for promotion and advancement are the most strongly related. This is another chart which essentially reveals similar information, especially the importance of work. This is from a study we did some years ago, comparing the overall magnitude of salary with the percentage of one's rating of job satisfaction. You see there's really not much of a correlation. Physicians and executives are no more satisfied than nurses. This is another example, if you will, of the variance decomposition of job satisfaction for employees. Work and promotions matter most. And what's interesting about job satisfaction, it can be thought of as a predictor of a productive behavior that you see in the bottom half of this chart, but also an outcome of job conditions. And this makes job satisfaction as a concept kind of interesting because it's both an outcome and a predictor. Part of the article that we read by Lisa Sari and Tim Judge recognized the interaction between job satisfaction and performance, but also job satisfaction and overall life satisfaction, characterizing the relationship in these three ways, and I appreciate the discussion board for realizing those things. I think of job satisfaction as an outcome, particularly as it relates to job design and work conditions. We'll see as we move through the semester a couple of ways that which jobs can be designed to encourage satisfactory behavior. The Attitudes article by Sergeant Judge also highlighted evidence of the dispositional nature of job satisfaction. The stories of twins who've been reared separately in different careers and yet report similar levels of job satisfaction. There's also stability of job satisfaction over time. Ratings of positive emotion for children have been correlated with ratings of job satisfaction for 40-year-olds. And then our point-counterpoint discussion was about whether managers can create satisfied employees. Essentially, if you argue that managers can create satisfied employees, you'd refer to the job design literature, noting that the complexity of work has an influence on the way people ultimately experience work and feel satisfied. If you argue the counterpoint, you'd say a significant portion of one's reported satisfaction is based on their natural inclination to be happy or sad. All right, that's a summary. See you next week.